We are now live streaming and ready to call the meeting to order. It is a special governing body meeting. It's 12:02 on Tuesday, the 28th. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance led by Councilwoman Villarreal, salute to the New Mexico flag led by Councilor Lindell, and an invocation from Councilor Garcia, followed by any remembrances that folks would like to make at that time. So please rise for those three items before we start.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I salute the flag of the state of New Mexico, the CO symbol of perfect friendship amongst united cultures.
As we gather here today, ready to close out the chapter of 2021, let us remember all that we've learned this past year, what we've learned from our successes, but probably most importantly, how we've learned from our mistakes. I want to wish everybody into 2022 a life full of health, kindness, compassion, love, integrity, reconciliation, and optimism. As we begin this new journey into a new year, we've got to remember that the hardest step is the first step, and we've got to take that to ultimately lead us down the journey and path that will better our city. With that, Mr. Mayor, I've got a remembrance I'd like to maybe possibly start us off with.
Go ahead, Councilor, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to remember the life of Mr. Andy Lopez. He was a deacon at St. John's Church, and he passed away yesterday. So I'd like to send my condolences to him, his family, and all the parishioners at St. John Baptist Church here in Santa Fe.
Thank you, Councilor. Anyone else with remembrance at this time? I would just send out all my thoughts to people who are dealing with, struggling with, overcoming COVID. At this time, it's continuing to flare and spike, and we shouldn't take any health for granted. Let's look after each other, look after those who are sick, and bring us all through this in a healing fashion. So with that as a moment, let's take a second of silence, and then we'll return to our agenda. Thanks, everybody. Madam Clerk, can you call the roll?
Yes, Mayor Weber.
Present.
I do have Councilor Betha marked as excused.
Correct.
Councilor Cassett. Present. Councilor Garcia.
Present.
Councilor Lindell.
Here,
Councilor Rivera.
Here.
Councilor Merworth. Here. We do have Councilor Vijo Koppler also marked as excused. Councilwoman Villarreal.
Present.
Mayor, you have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Can we get a motion to approve the agenda, please?
move to approve.
I heard Councilor Garcia with the motion. Is there a second?
Second,
Councilor Lindell with the second. Madam Clerk, can you call the roll?
Yes, Councilor Cassett.
Yes.
All right. Councilor Garcia.
Yes.
Councilor Lindell.
yes,
Councilor Rivera.
Yes.
Councilor Merworth.
Yes.
Councilwoman Villarreal.
Yes.
Mayor Weber.
Yes,
Agenda has been approved.
thank you. Is there anything to be removed from the consent agenda? If so, now would be the time. If not, can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda?
move to approve.
Second.
Second.
I heard a motion from Councilor Lindell and a second from Councilor Garcia. Is there discussion? And if not, Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll on that?
Councilor Garcia.
Yes.
Councilor Lindell.
Yes,
Councilor Rivera.
Yes.
Councilor Merworth.
Yes.
Councilwoman Villarreal,
Yes.
Counselor Cassett,
Yes.
Mayor Weber.
Yes.
Motion has been approved.
So the consent agenda is approved. That takes us to item, I believe it's number 8 on the agenda, which is matters from the city attorney. And City Attorney McSherry, I turn to you. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor Weber. And I'd also like to introduce Matthew McCarley, who's our outside counsel in the opioid litigation, including the settlement agreement. You all may remember that we found out right before our last regular governing body meeting that the state's AG, Hector Valderas, had announced that he was joining the global settlement with the 3 major distributors that are named in our lawsuit. So those folks have a $21 billion settlement with standard language that is really non-negotiable. And if we'd like to participate in the state's allocation agreement, which will be the state's portion of that 21 billion, which is approximately 220 million, then we need to accept this settlement agreement. So Matthew's available to answer questions about the agreement specifically, and we can do that part in open session if it's questions about the agreement. If we want to delve into how this impacts other parts of the litigation, which are ongoing against the distributors, retailers, and local defendants, then we should go into an executive session. But if there's questions about the agreement itself, then we can do that in open session, and we don't need to go into executive session. But I did include an executive session in case we wanted to go into any other parts of the strategy in our litigation on this matter. My understanding is that Albuquerque and the County of Santa Fe have both voted to join the settlement this week. I'm not sure if we know about other local governments in New Mexico, but I think we were anticipating that quite a few of them would also be voting before January 2nd. So the reason for the special meeting is that we did need to have this type of vote in order to be one of the, to be in the primary group of settling parties. So I think that's my introduction. I don't know if Matthew, if you want to add anything to that broad statement, and then we can go to questions.
Thank you. So Aaron, you may have to guide us if a question takes us into an area where an executive session would be necessary. You'll have to advise us to that effect. And I know we have the link in our on our calendar so that if an executive session is warranted, we can always do that. And then there is an action item should we choose to go down that road at the end of this discussion.
However, that's correct. And I guess I should say, I do recommend that we do approve the action item, but certainly we should answer any questions before we go to that vote.
Very good. So the questions that are germane, that are not required for which an executive session are not required, would be have to do with the details of the proposed settlement and the specifics of what we would be agreeing to. So I think we should provide ample room for that. And if it's able to be done in a completely open and transparent session, let's stick with that. So I will just look for hands to go up if there are members of the governing body who would like to ask questions of either the city attorney or Mr. McCarley. Councilor Lindell, your hand is up. Just if you're going to put a hand up, anybody, please give me an ample notice if we're going to do it physically rather than with the little hand on the screen. Councilor Lindell, your many hands are up.
Thank you, Mayor. So a couple of weeks ago, I read an article in the New York Times that the U.S. District Court for the Southern District of New York had delivered some seemingly very bad news to the Sackler family, that they rejected that they don't have protection from civil lawsuits in return for their $4.5 billion contribution. And I know this has been a painful negotiation to get to where everyone is today. Does that have any potential of changing what our settlement should be, or what our settlement is, or is, if you could just comment on that, that would be great.
I can take that one, Aaron.
it doesn't have any impact on the settlement that we're here to discuss today. The settlement that we're discussing today is just with the 3 distributors. Purdue is one of the manufacturers, and we do think that there was a lot of work done to try to get a settlement with Purdue and the Sackler family. We have hopes that, although the Attorney General's office in New Mexico worked hard on that, and they're disappointed that this means that the Sacklers may have to put up more money to get this matter settled. But that is separate and apart from the settlement that we're talking about today.
So would we be involved in a subsequent settlement?
Of course, yeah. We've, on behalf of the city has sued Purdue, Mallinckrodt, Endo, Allergan, and also the 3 distributors that we're talking about today, and several national chain pharmacies, and including Johnson & Johnson as one of the manufacturers. So all of those defendants, we are continuing to pursue a remedy on behalf of the city, and ultimately, hopefully, we will get a resolution from each one of them.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Thanks for kicking it off, Councilor Lindell. Let me take the floor for 1 minute and just see if we can broadly sketch out, consider it an essay question rather than a purely fact-based response. Maybe you can give us, following up on Councilor Lindell's question, a picture of what the settlement is in front of us, what its boundaries are, what it includes, what it doesn't include, and why the recommendation would be for us to participate as Albuquerque and who else was it, Aaron, that you said also the county already agreed to do this. Give us a sense of the pros and cons of us joining with Albuquerque and the county at this time, please.
Sure, thank you, Mayor. And I forgot to thank you, Mayor, and council members for allowing me to be here today to discuss this. I appreciate it. To give you a little bit more background, there was an agreement between these 3 defendants, these 3 distributors, and Johnson & Johnson that had been worked on for about 1.5 years. Because the state Attorney General disagreed with the allocation amount that was designated to come back to the state of New Mexico, his initial response was that he was not going to participate. The state was not going to participate in the settlements. Because of that, if the Attorney General opts out, then the subdivisions really don't have a way to participate in those settlements. There was some, I believe, political pressure at work here, but I'm not, I'll leave that to politicians. But the Attorney General changed his mind with regards to the distributor agreement. And one of the reasons why he told us that he did was that he felt that the counties and municipalities needed to get some money to help address this problem quickly. Number one. Number two is that the likelihood that we would get better terms in a carve-out negotiation with the distributors was low because of their stated inability to pay out large amounts up front. Therefore, the settlement agreement with these 3 distributors is over 18 years. And so it will be split out over 18 years. In order to get all the money that's coming to New Mexico, not only does the state have to participate, but the majority, the super majority of counties and municipalities have to participate in order for the state to get all of the money that's designated to it under the settlement agreement. The Attorney General continues to negotiate with Johnson & Johnson on a carve out for the state of New Mexico only for better terms with them than what was offered in the global settlement under the allocation model that was agreed to by the majority of attorneys general, not the attorney general for the state of New Mexico. So that is the ongoing process. That's the reason why we're here to ask permission to participate in the distributor settlement and not the Johnson & Johnson settlement, because there are ongoing negotiations with the attorney general on that, with that defendant. As far as the pro and cons of participating, the pros are, of course, getting the maximum dollars back to the state and getting some money to the city as quickly as possible. The cons are there are some contingencies in that agreement that we didn't like, that if we would have had the ability to take them out, we would have. In addition, we don't like the payout time. That's 18 years is a long time. We would have preferred a shorter payout. But also a con is that we would have to litigate against these defendants at trial. And as the council knows, we came previously to discuss that matter. There is an ongoing trial date with the county. And we believe that would make it more difficult having those defendants in.
And we have the amount of money on the table is known. What's not completely known is its distribution. Is that correct?
That's correct. And thank you, Mr. Mayor, for bringing that up. There is an ongoing negotiation between the state and the subdivisions on allocation of the money that has been set aside in this settlement for the state of New Mexico. Our current proposal is a 60-40 split, 60% to the subdivisions, 40% to the state. There won't be an abatement fund. Some other states have agreed to a 15-70-15 model, which is 15% in cash to the municipalities and, subdivisions, 15% in payment to the state, cash payment to the state, and then 70% to be placed in an abatement fund for those funds to be used for abatement programs. The state feels like at this time, and I agree with them, that it's probably we don't have enough time to come up with an abatement model. And so they're willing to agree on just a straight up split of the money, and that money will be coming back to the city. So 60-40 is our proposal right now. We are in discussions with them. There hasn't been an agreement yet. All indications are that we'll get a pretty favorable, what I believe will be a favorable deal with them. So we can't tell you exactly how much money the city will get, because that would be dependent upon the allocation agreement, in-state allocation agreement. And since we haven't reached that yet, we don't know. I would say under the 15-70-15 model, the city would get somewhere in the neighborhood of $1 million in cash from these three defendants. And of course, there's other defendants that we're pursuing. So that wouldn't be the end of the litigation and monies coming back to the city. But that would be under the 15% model. So I would think that the amount, if we agreed on a 60-40 split, would be north of that quite a bit.
And just to be clear, the proposal in front of us is to agree to the participation in the settlement. If we don't adopt that, what path are we implicitly choosing then?
If the city chooses not to participate in this settlement agreement with these distributor defendants, then we would have to continue to pursue them in litigation. And because the Attorney General has elected to participate, that would trigger what's called a lone pine order from the MDL judge. We would have to present pretty quickly our experts to the defendants for deposition and an expert report to them. And as many of you know, we haven't been able to conduct any discovery in this litigation because it's been stayed in the MDL. And so it's basically a a bad thing for us. If we don't participate, we would be have our hands tied behind our back severely.
Okay, that pretty much, I just wanted to lay the landscape out in front of everybody. I may have forgotten some points that are salient. Aaron, is there anything I left out that you think we need to put out there before we entertain specific drill down questions from members of the governing body?
No, I think that's been helpful. Matthew, do you have anything else that you would recommend?
I don't have anything else except to say that we do recommend that the city participate in this settlement. If the city elects to participate, then what would happen is we would register the city. That would generate a participation document, which we can fill out on behalf of the city electronically. Once that's been filled out, then the city is considered to be participating in the settlement. That's all that needs to be done. So we're just asking for your consent to participate.
And I just want to be clear about the $1 million number that you floated out there. That was purely as a example of if we went with what other jurisdictions did with 15, 70, 15, that might be an estimate under this total amount that would come to the city. But if it's a 60, 40 different allocation model, it will be a different amount. That 1 million was just a sample for that.
That's right.
That example.
That's right.
So
Yeah.
we don't really know the actual amount, but it's certainly more than 1 million at the end of the day. And there are more litigation efforts still to be determined. This is not the end of the road on the opioid case.
That is correct.
Thank you. Questions from other members of the governing body? Councilor Lindell, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. So just trying to clarify this. And I know that the number isn't, that it is an unknown number, but the $1 million number, previously you talked about that this is a payout over the course of 18 or 20 years. Are you saying that we get $1 million over the course of 18 or 20 years?
I'm saying that under the 1570-15 model, which the state of New Mexico is not going to adopt, 15% of that would be approximately $1 million, and it would be paid out over 18 years. But as the mayor pointed out, that number is going to be north of $1 million. And so because we don't have an agreement yet with the state, I can't tell you exactly, or probably even an approximate amount. But I would say that it's going to be north of $1 million paid out over 18 years. Now, the one of the things that we've done here, and this is public, so it's not anything confidential, but what we did in Texas, we got a carve out agreement with Johnson & Johnson for the state of Texas, where they agreed to give us all the money this year. So we didn't have to wait the 8 years, which is in their standard agreement, which other jurisdictions have signed on to. I believe that's one of the things that the Attorney General is trying to do and with Johnson & Johnson. So hopefully if he can reach an agreement with them, hopefully it'll be less time or no time for the payout for those defendants. But these particular defendants, the distributors, they're large companies. They claim that their revenue is, they have small margins revenue, although that they're very wealthy companies, but they don't make a lot of money because they're just distributors and transportation costs is up. And so that they need that time to pay out the amounts that they're asked, that they've agreed to pay out, which for the whole country is approximately $21 billion. And so I hope that answers your question.
Okay, thank you. Ms. McSherry, can you give us a basic accounting of how much in legal costs we have at this point in time pursuing this settlement?
Mayor Weber, Councilor Lindell, we have a contingency fee agreement, and actually I'll let, there's a separate agreement regarding legal fees in this particular settlement agreement, and it does require some modifications to that agreement. So the percentages are changed under the settlement agreement. So I'll let Matthew talk about that a little bit.
Yes, thank you. And thank you for reminding me to talk about that. My favorite subject, attorney's fees. But the city actually is getting a great deal. What we're required to do under the distributor agreement is to forfeit our contract with the city for attorney's fees, which were, if you'll recall, is a contingent fee, which the maximum amount was 15%. And then we have to go and request attorney's fees from the MDL judge, and the maximum that we can recover is 4%. So the city's getting a great deal, I believe, as far as attorney's fees are concerned. There's also a separate cost fund that we have to apply to recover our cost. So the bottom line is the city will not be paying out one dime, one penny of its allocated money in attorney's fees or cost. So the numbers that I'm giving to you are net to the city.
So who is paying our attorney's fees?
The attorney's fees were taken off the top. A fund was created by the MDL judge. And that's the reason why we have to go and petition him for our attorney's fees. But the maximum that we can recover is 4%. The reason why they did that is there are many jurisdictions throughout the country that did not pursue this litigation. They did not want them to receive a windfall for not hiring attorneys, and they didn't want the city of Santa Fe, for example, to be punished for hiring attorneys. And we believe it's fair, and I think that's the reason why it was done.
Okay, thank you. I'll yield the floor for now, Mayor. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Counselor. Other questions from the governing body about any aspect of the settlement? Counselor Rivera, I see your hand. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. McCarley. Just a quick question. Are there any stipulations in the agreement as to how the money can be spent or utilized?
The money is supposed to be spent on abatement of the epidemic. It's a little loose about where than the abatement funds that have been set up. The 15-70-15 model with the abatement fund receiving 70%. Most states put a lot of strings on that and a lot of requirements. There are some restrictions in the agreement. It is supposed to be used to abate the epidemic, but it is not as tight as the other fund that was created with the other models. And you can take a look at that. It's one of the exhibits in the agreement. The agreement's public, and Aaron has a copy of that that you can share with you. But you can take a look at it and see what it says about that.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Good
And
question.
Mayor Weber, Councilor Rivera, it is posted on our agenda so that it's available for folks to look at.
Thank you.
Yeah, but good point as to the stipulation as to where the funds get directed. Thank you.
The good news is that under the 15-70-15 model, that 70% abatement fund, you have to apply for it every year. With this, because the Attorney General is agreeing to split the funds will automatically come to the city, and the city won't have to do a request every year. The city will just have the money. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay.
Anyone else with a question this time? Does anybody feel the need to go into an executive session to pursue things that are more limited than what we're doing right now with an overview of the agreement? Councilor Mayorworth, did you unmute so you could have the floor?
I was going to make a motion, Mayor.
Let me just go one more time. Is there any other questions prior to a motion being made? Well, we can have the motion made and still discuss it. Councilor Mayorworth, you have the floor.
Move to approve.
Okay, there's a motion there. The item that you're approving is, perhaps the city clerk could read the action item that's in front of us.
Sure, Mayor. It is approval of the master settlement agreement as updated on October 22nd, 2021 to settle the city's legal disputes with the opioid distributors, Henson Corporation, Cardinal Health Incorporated, and Amerisource Bergen Corporation, as raised in City of Santa Fe versus Purdue Pharma, DNM number 19-CV-01105.
So Councilor Merriworth, that's the motion that is the item your motion.
Move to approve as the city clerk read action item 9A on our agenda.
Is there a
Second.
second? I hear a second from Councilor Rivera. Is there further discussion or questions? If not, Madam Clerk, can you call the roll?
Or Counselor Lindell,
Yes.
Counselor Rivera,
Yes.
Counselor Merriworth,
Yes.
Counselor Beho Coppler. Oh, sorry, she's excused. Councilwoman Villarreal,
Yes.
Counselor Cassett,
Yes.
Counselor Garcia,
Yes.
Mayor Weber.
Yes,
Motion has been approved.
thank you. I think, Madam City Attorney or Mr. McCarley, we've approved that item. Is there anything left to be said before we adjourn? Other than thank you.
Mayor Weber, councilors, I don't think so, but we will have further updates on this litigation as the next few weeks go by.
That would be great. Keep us posted on other votes from other jurisdictions and then next steps so that we're fully informed as we go forward. To both of you, thank you for your good work and for bringing this to us today in a timely fashion.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, council members.
Thank you, everyone.